Welcome to this installment of Clarifying Tax Situations with attorney and CPA David W. Klossing.
What elements are necessary for fraud to occur in my divorce? And can you give me an example of how this might play out? There have been numerous studies done around what are the necessary elements for fraud to occur. Well, the first element is there has to be a perceived opportunity. The person committing the fraud has to believe that there's an opportunity to commit fraud and get away with it. Okay? In a divorce scenario, either husband or wife believe they can commit the indiscretion without being caught. The second element is some sort of pressure or motive. Okay? Most pressures or motives in these fraud situations involve either a social pressure or a financial pressure. Often, additionally, the perpetrator believes they cannot share the problems they're having with anybody. The last element is rationalization. The human mind is incredibly capable of rationalizing. Matter of fact, the best example of this is Al Capone actually had a self-image of him being a nice guy. Okay? Rationalization is necessary so the person committing the fraud can maintain their self-image that they are basically an honest person that is caught up in an unfortunate circumstance. Believe it or not, the person committing the fraud often sees themselves as the victim in the situation. So, for an example, I'd like to talk to you about an Alaskan plastic surgeon that committed fraud against his wife and the IRS and got caught doing it. Around the time of his divorce, Dr. Brandner devised a scheme to hide more than $5 million in assets using offshore accounts. Shortly after his wife filed for divorce, Dr. Brandner collected up marital assets, which he secretly transported from Tacoma, Washington to Costa Rica by car. Now let's talk about the fraud pyramid. First of all, there had to be a perceived opportunity to commit fraud. Obviously, he was thinking that if he drove to Costa Rica rather than took a plane, there wouldn't be a paper trail showing how he got there. Once he arrived in Costa Rica, Dr. Brandner opened up two accounts. In one, he deposited approximately $350,000 cash. In the other account, which happened to be a safety deposit box, he placed 1,000 ounces of gold in a bank's safety deposit box. Following his activities in Costa Rica, Dr. Brandner then traveled to Panama. Once in Panama, to hide what he was doing, Dr. Brandner opened up another bank account in the name of a sham corporation. In 2008, Dr. Brandner made another deposit of roughly $4.6 million into this sham corporation's business account. Following Dr. Brandner's trips to Costa Rica and Panama, in subsequent court filings in the divorce, Brandner did not disclose these accounts to the divorce court. In addition, Brandner failed to disclose the investment income he was earning on these offshore accounts for tax purposes. In 2011, after the divorce was finalized, evidently he got away with hiding these assets during the divorce. He was attempting to repatriate $4.6 million that he had stashed away in a Panamanian bank account. Unfortunately for Dr. Brandner, in the act of repatriating the funds, he was stopped by agents from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Immigration Department, and Customs Enforcement. While being questioned by these agents, Dr. Brandner made false statements, which is tax perjury, by the way. It is a felony in and of itself to lie to a federal agent. The $4.8 million of funds were seized by custom agents. In November of 2015, Dr. Brandner was convicted by a federal jury of 3 counts of evasion and 4 counts of wire fraud. Dr. Brandner was recently sentenced for his crimes. He will serve 4 years in federal prison. When he is released, he will serve 2 years of supervised release. It's expected that Dr. Brandner will face additional civil liability regarding the potential restitution to his former wife for the money he absconded with out of the marital estate. In addition, as a licensed professional, Dr. Brander is expected to face additional repercussions, i.e. he may no longer be a doctor at the end of this. His license to practice medicine is at risk because most professional ethics and review boards will revoke or suspend a license or any type of credentials for an individual who's been convicted of a crime of moral turpitude. Unfortunately for Dr. Brandner, tax fraud and wire fraud are acts of moral turpitude. Therefore, it is expected he will not be a licensed doctor at some point in the future. So, let's spin back to the fraud pyramid. First of all, Dr. Brandner must have perceived an opportunity to commit fraud against his wife. Evidently, his instincts of his ability to get away with it were well founded, where at the close of the divorce, the marital settlement did not make mention of the assets that were absconded with. So, what kind of pressure or motive do you think was at play here? Was it a social one or a financial one? Well, obviously, financial pressure must have been, I've worked really hard as a plastic surgeon to become wealthy. My wife doesn't deserve this money. I earn this money. Who knows what was going through his head? But obviously there was some sort of pressure there that caused him to do what he did, whether it be self-imposed or societal, who knows. There must have been some rationalization going on in Dr. Brandner's mind that I'm not privy to. How else would you explain that you'd be okay with your own self-image in that you're committing tax fraud and fraud against your wife in a divorce and wire fraud simultaneously? How are you okay with yourself as a person when you're doing these things? That's the mind of a criminal. I guess that's between Dr. Brandner and the man upstairs.